from Sri Lanka. Ayubowan means may you have a long life.
We are students of Gateway College Colombo.
We are from grade 5. We will be reading a book called Vesak Lantern.
It is written by a famous author called Sybil Wettasinghe.
I am sure you will enjoy it. When the moon shines bright in a perfect circle, we all know it is the full moon day. On such a day in the month of May, we go to the temple with special fervor. We take with us offerings of joss sticks to burn at the shrines. We take with us flowers and chant the Lord's teachings as we lay them at the altar. At sunset, lights begin to shine in many colors in all the homes. These are the Vesak Lanterns. They are lit up to celebrate Vesak, the threefold festival.
In preparation for the celebrations of the big day, a little boy was busy tying up the bamboo framework of a Vesak lantern. He had plans to make it as big as he could, just like the ones he had seen in the city last year, when he and his grandma had gone to see the Vesak illuminations. There were lanterns as big as their house. They had been talking about those lanterns for months together. People, young and old, were preparing to celebrate the festival. Whole families worked together in groups. They made bunches of tiny lanterns which would make a beautiful sight on Vesak night. But the little boy who wished to make the biggest lantern worked all alone. He had no brothers or sisters to help him. He had only his grandmother, with whom he lived in a tiny mud and wattle house.
Grandma loved him a great deal. He was a tiny baby when she took him over and brought him up with all the love and tender care in the world. She called him Patia, which means baby. Grandma sold vegetables to make a living. She grew them all by herself. It was a hard job to do, but she was glad she had a little helper who pulled out the weeds and dug the garden for her, watered the plants, and went about gathering cow dung for manure. Patia was 10, but he worked like a man. He went to school to learn his numbers, to help Grandma keep accounts. He studied books to read aloud to her. Early on Sunday morning each week, they both went to the fair to sell their own vegetables and to buy what they needed for their living.
Day, and Patia made life fun. He made the bird gong for the vegetable plot and dressed up a scarecrow to go up on the fence. Grandma smiled when she saw him at work. She often called him her hard-working little man, and when she saw him with a huge Vesak lantern, she said, We can live in it, can't we, son?
Patia worked on his lantern every afternoon. A few children from nearby came over to see. The news had gone round that Patia was building a very big lantern. "How can you hang up this big lantern?" they asked him. "It won't be hung up," replied Patia. "It will stand right here on Vesak night as well." The children kept on coming. It was a new idea, the big lantern. 6 days before Vesak, Patia finished working on the framework. Sitting back to look at it, a thought came to him. How could they afford to buy paper to cover this big lantern? With that thought in his mind, Patia went to see his friends. Most of their lanterns had been finished. They now stood in the houses like ladies dressed to go to the wedding. Patia thought of his own lantern back home, blocking the doorway.
He was sad when he walked home. There stood the framework of his lantern, looking like a poor beggar maiden who would look beautiful when dressed up in fine clothes. But now she had none. It was noon. Patia went looking for Grandma. She was in the kitchen blowing into the fire.
"I have been a fool, Grandma," began Patia. "We won't have enough paper to cover the whole lantern, Grandma," he said, tears running down his cheeks. "Tomorrow is Saturday," she told him. "We have to dig up the sweet potatoes and sell at the Sunday fair." Patia laughed, as he often did when Grandma spoke like that. They dug up the sweet potatoes next day. It was a good harvest. Leaving the fair on Sunday afternoon, Patia was filled with joy. They had sold the sweet potatoes and got plenty of money. He could now imagine his lantern lit up on Vesak night. Grandma walked silently. Patia looked up and saw a smile to play hide and seek on her face.
Shops in Vesak were full of brightly colored papers, caps, masks, flags, and piles of bucket lanterns.
Patia and Grandma walked into a shop and bought all they needed to decorate the lantern with. Soon after lunch that afternoon, Grandma slept. It had been a tiring day for her at the fair. Patia brought out the sheets of colored paper, new and smooth. Then he brought out Grandma's old pair of scissors, but he could not cut. He was afraid he would go wrong. He peeped into the house. Grandma was peacefully asleep.
Vesak illuminations would go on for 4 days. The village folk would go out sightseeing, usually on the second day. That was the way things were every Vesak. Patia had known, but this time there was a difference, and that was the giant lantern. "Do hurry up making the lantern, son. We haven't had much time left," said Grandma, while sitting down for a cup of tea in between her own work. Then Patia told her his problem. Grandma agreed with him. It was true. They could never buy any more paper if this was spoiled. Grandma thought for a while, then agreed to help him place the paper on the lantern. But she could not really get down to work till the day before Vesak. On that day, they worked together. It was a harder job than they had imagined. Grandma was out of touch of this kind of work, and Patia had never made a Vesak lantern ever before. There wasn't room enough on the small veranda for 2 people and a huge lantern to stand together. Therefore, Grandma grandmother sat on a little stool inside the lantern, cutting out the paper. Patia stood on another stool outside the lantern, pasting the paper. The lantern looked splendid, yellow and blue, with bamboo tinsel shining. The last bit of trimming went in place on the huge lantern. Patia jumped down from the stool. His face was shining with joy. Click, click went Grandma's scissor. Within the lantern, she was cutting more trimming. Stop, Grandma, stop! We have finished work on the lantern. Patia called out happily. But Patia, how can I get out? You've pasted me in, called out Grandma from within the lantern. In his excitement, Patia had closed up the opening left for Grandma to come out. Oh, Grandma, whatever are we to do now? How can we break up the lantern? Patia was very worried. Don't worry, my precious love, said Grandma from inside the lantern. Hand over to me the candles and the box of matches. I will do the needful.
Grandma lit the candles inside, setting the lantern aglow with a soft light.
Aren't you happy, son? Grandma called out to Patia. But before Patia could answer, she went on. As for me, I am ever so happy because I can still do what I have always done and what I shall always do on Vesak night.
Against its sides was seen the silhouette of an aged figure in deep meditation.
It was the grandest Vesak lantern of all. Everyone, young and old, came over to see it that night. They came from far and near. They came till after midnight. They stood around, wondering at its beauty, and said, "What a clever little boy Patia was to think of such a wonderful idea."
When the last of the people had gone away, there was a great silence. The moon shone serenely overhead. Clouds sailed gently across the skies. It was peaceful all around. Slowly, the lantern grew dim. The candles were burning lower. Quietly, very quietly, Grandma broke open a side of the lantern and stepped out. There was Patia beside it. There was Patia asleep beside it, his face full of a dream world happiness.